Hello everyone, and welcome to One Archetype 5 decks. For this video, I tried to create 5 different flash decks in Standard using different combinations of colors to see if I could have success with each of them on the MTG Arena ranked ladder. I had a lot of fun putting together these decks and honestly was surprised just how good the results were. Anyways, let's just jump right into it. I'm going to speed up a lot of the gameplay since I was playing best of 3 and I managed to play at least 5 games with each deck to get a more diverse gameplay. The 5 different color combinations that I used for the decks were Izzet, Dimir, Simic, Sultai, and Temur. The nice thing about flash decks is that they're very flexible and there's a potential for even more than 5 playable flash decks, since I did not try making a mono blue flash deck that I believe has some potential. Out of the 27 games, all of which were from at least rank 4 platinum, my record was 20-7 for a very impressive win rate of 74%. Surprisingly though, the one deck that did not perform well as the others was Temur Flash, which as you can see I went 3-4 with. But I do believe the deck could be one of the strongest flash decks, but I'll get into that later. Each other deck did exceptionally well at 4-1, and Izzet Flash having the best record at 5-0. One thing to mention is that the Izzet Flash deck and Temur Flash decks were not my original decks, but the other 3 I did create on my own. Each Flash deck that I played with had similar playstyles, but Izzet Flash was definitely the most aggressive deck I was playing, since I had 3 Embercleaves in the deck and ran a lot of 1-drops including Shock, Opt, Unsummon, and Spectral Sailor. Although the deck seems more like an Izzet aggro deck than a Flash deck, I was running a playset of Brynhorn Cutthroat, playset of Brazen Borrower, and 2 of Sea Dasher Octopus. The deck is very fun to play, and I would say it does not require the highest skill level to reach its full potential, but does represent some unique situations. If I were to rate the Izzet Flash deck on a tier scale of all decks in Standard right now, I would say it's somewhere between a tier 2 and tier 3 deck. If you like playing aggro decks or just want to find a deck to quickly rank up the ladder, I would strongly recommend playing Izzet Flash. Now onto Temur Flash. Like I mentioned earlier, Temur Flash was the one deck that I actually had a losing record with, and I have a couple explanations for that. First of all, it is the Flash deck I'm most unfamiliar with, since I have played some version of every other deck in the past. I used to play Izzet Flash during Throne of Eldraine Standard, and before the recent bans, I experimented with Sultai Flash, Simic Flash, and Dimir Flash a lot. Another reason that I feel led to a weaker win rate was the fact that it is a harder deck to play and doesn't have the most straightforward gameplay. Lastly, the matchups matter a lot when playing Flash decks, since most of the time they are weaker to aggro decks, especially mono red, and when I was playing the games that you see in the background right now, I had in general more bad matchups when I was playing with Temur. I would say that Temur Flash is a more mid-range deck than a tempo deck since it does not run any Brynhorn Cutthroats. In general, I believe that Temur Flash can be the strongest of all Flash decks, as long as you have a lot of experience playing it and have a good understanding of the current meta that you're playing in. I had a hard time rating this deck since I know it has a lot of potential, but I did do quite poorly with it. But I think the deck is in between tier 1 and tier 2. That being said, this deck is for someone that has more experience in the game and likes to try new creative decks. Next up is Simic Flash. I had a 4-1 record playing with it and had a lot of fun doing so. The version I was playing ran a playset of Brynhorn Cutthroat and was a more tempo driven since I ran 11 counter spells in the main board. That might seem like a lot, but they work really well with the Brynhorns and Nightpack Amishers that I was running. Even though Simic Flash is not the hardest deck to play, it does take a lot of skill to properly leverage your counter spells with the limited creatures that you run to end the game. Since Simic Flash is weaker to aggro, I was running 2 Euro in the main board along with 1 in the sideboard. Overall, Simic Flash has the kind of lost its, if you will, flashiness, since Temur and other Flash decks have slowly become more popular. Right now, I feel like Simic Flash is a tier 2 deck, but as the meta evolves, it could become a weaker or stronger deck. If you want to play a new tempo strategy, Simic Flash is the deck for you. The second to final deck I will be going over is Dimir Flash. This was a deck that I thought would become a part of the meta game in Ikoria Standard, with the addition of Slitherwisp and Cunning Nightbounder, both of which I use a playset in the deck. It never really caught anybody's attention, and I have rarely, if ever, played against someone else just playing straight Dimir Flash, which does make sense since you do not have access to Nightpack Amateur. This was a deck that had high hopes going to the games and definitely met those expectations. The highlight of this deck is how quick the deck is and how well it plays against aggro. I ran 3 Eliminate in the main board, which really helped combat aggro, and 3 Gadwigs, a very underrated card in my opinion. Another special thing about Dimir Flash is that it has some of the best answers to cards that Flash decks are normally weak against, most notably Shifting Ceratops, which both can't be countered and has protection from blue, the color that you see in each Flash deck. Besides those reasons for why Dimir Flash can be very powerful, it can also destroy control decks with a good timed Brynhorn Cutthroat or an unanswered Cunning Nightbounder, which makes your flash spells cost 1 colorless and uncounterable. One last thing about this deck that I love is the interaction of playing Cunning Nightbounder on turn 2 and having Ashiok's Erasure playable the next turn, which cannot be countered and is something you almost never see. Anyways, enough of my praise of this deck. I would rank this as a tier 2 deck, and although that may seem high to some people, this deck has so much potential that I believe it could even become a tier 1 deck if no one is playing Mystical Disputes in their main board. If you want a new unique deck to try out, play this one because it is a lot of fun, and of course I will have my deck lists in the description if you want to try out my versions. The last deck to go over is Sultai Flash. With some of the same pieces of Dimir Flash and Simic Flash combined, this is the deck I had the most fun playing. Although the deck's primary weakness is its mana base, you don't always get the right mana to cast a Slitherwisp on turn 3 and Frilled Mystic the next turn. It is still pretty consistent. Like the Simic deck, which is weaker to aggro and runs 0, we also have 2 heroes in this deck to help against aggro. In addition, I ran 3 Eliminates and 2 Aether Gusts to combat aggro. And to top off the janky but also competitive Sultai Flash deck, I ran 3 Sublime Epiphany, which in hindsight, even though I went 4-1, you probably shouldn't run 3 of in most decks, with the existence of, you guessed it, Mystical Dispute. Sultai Flash is another deck like Dimir Flash that I've played against maybe 1 or 2 times, but looks to be a lot better in this new fresh meta. I would rank this deck as a tier 2 deck since it has a very unique access to strong removal spells, strong flash cards, and valuable counterspells. Now that I've gone over each deck, it's time to decide what is the strongest Flash deck. If you go by the ratings I gave these decks, it would look to be Dimir Flash being the strongest, but since I didn't have a good showing and considering I went undefeated with Is It Flash, one of the more underrated Flash decks, I can comfortably say that all 5 of the Flash decks I played with are all fairly competitive, with certain Flash decks having their own advantages depending on what the metagame looks like. If you like aggressive decks and play well with them, Is It Flash will probably be the best deck for you. If you're a very skilled Magic player, your Dimir Flash could be the best deck for you. Or if you want to surprise the competition and have some fun doing so, Sultai or Dimir Flash could be the best deck for you to play. Or, of course, you could play the classic Simic Flash, if that's what you prefer. That will do it for the video. I tried doing something new here on my channel, and I would love it if you could comment any suggestions to improve this kind of video. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe as it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.